I'm Stephanie, and welcome to the Reading Room. This is the playlist where I review what I read in the last month, and I will do my best to keep it spoiler-free. As I say in all my reviews, these are solely about the books, not about the authors. So let's go ahead and dive in and talk about the 6 books that I read in August. So first up, we have The Little Italian Hotel by Phaedra Patrick, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing her first name correctly. So I actually bought this. This was kind of an impulse buy while I was waiting for a flight in Pittsburgh, and the bookstore had a buy 3 get 1 free deal, and it looked pretty cute. But let's take a look at back cover copy first to see what the book promised. Ginny Splinter, acclaimed radio host and relationship expert, prides herself on knowing what's best for others. So she's sure her husband, Adrian, will love the special trip to Italy she's planned for their 25th wedding anniversary. But when Ginny presents the gift to Adrian, he surprises her with his own very different plan, a divorce. Beside herself with heartache, Ginny impulsively goes live on air and invites 4 heartbroken listeners to join her on the trip. From hiking the hills of Bologna to sharing a gondola in Venice and dancing until dawn, Ginny and her guests embark on a vacation of fun, hope, and self-discovery. Sunny, tender, and brimming with charm, the Little Italian Hotel explores the importance of friendship and reclaiming the present moment, even if it means leaving the past behind. So, all in, this is a fine read. It didn't try to be anything it wasn't, and I really appreciated that. It's simply a story about a woman being pushed into her own midlife crisis when her husband asks for a divorce and figuring out what she really wants from life instead of living in service to others. The book is a bit slow, and it took me longer to read than I anticipated it would, especially given that it's a pretty small book. But I think that really comes down to it's simply not my typical thriller where I just had to get to the ending and understand what the hell was going on. It's a pretty simple story of a woman finding herself and helping others along the way. The secondary characters were really interesting in their own right, and honestly, I would rather have had read the story following one of the other characters, as their story was much more poignant and moving. They had their own take on heartbreak and what it means to mourn, whether that's the loss of someone else or oneself. Having just been to Venice myself, it was lovely to revisit the city and Italy in general in this book. Though I do wish some of the descriptions were a bit more vivid, as some scenes felt like they could be taking place at a B&B in New Hampshire, not necessarily Italy, minus a few grazies thrown in to remind us that we're in Italy. I'd read some reviews that didn't love the ending of this, but I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was realistic, though the third act conflict felt a bit rushed. Or there just wasn't much lead up to it, and it kind of felt forced because it has to happen. Along with Ginny's feelings on it, that part I kind of struggled with. But we move past it and close out the book in what I think is a satisfactory way. If you're looking for a really light summertime read, this is a good pick. For living up to its expectations, I'd give this a 4 out of 5 stars, as it was exactly what I expected it to be. All in, a pretty good and easy read. Alright, next up is All the Dangerous Things by Stacy Willingham. So this was an add-on to my book of the month, but let's see what the book promised to be about. 1 year ago, Isabel Drake's life changed forever. Her toddler son, Mason, was taken out of his crib in the middle of the night, while she and her husband were asleep in the next room. With little evidence and few leads for the police to chase, the case quickly went cold. However, Isabel cannot rest until Mason is returned to her, literally. Except for the occasional catnap or small blackout where she loses track of time, she hasn't slept in a year. Isabel's entire existence now revolves around finding him, but she knows she can't go on this way forever. In hopes of drawing loose a new witness or buried clue, she agrees to be interviewed by a true crime podcaster. But his interest in Isabel's past makes her nervous. His incessant questioning paired with her severe insomnia have brought up uncomfortable memories from her own childhood, making Isabel start to doubt her recollection of the night of Mason's disappearance, as well as second guess who she can trust, including herself. But she is determined to figure out the truth, no matter where it leads. Following up her instant bestseller, A Flicker in the Dark, Stacy Willingham delivers a totally gripping thriller about a desperate mother with a troubled past. So, all in, I really liked this. The atmosphere is fantastic, and it really ramped up like the spooky feeling, and you really want to know if Isabel, our protagonist, was actually a part of reality or hallucinating certain things along the way. She was unreliable, but not ridiculously so. Though there were some scenes where she's lying to people that made me roll my eyes, but I still felt like Isabel was real. And she wasn't unreliable just because she continued drinking when she shouldn't be, or some other forced reason that's really common in thrillers these days. The women in the story are complex and flawed, and that's the point. Isabel struggles with motherhood, herself, and her past. I did like that Isabel was honest with herself about motherhood. Like, she loves her son, but she is able to admit that being a mother is hard. And it sucks that we live in a society that demonizes women who say these things out loud. But we need them to be able to. We need to take care of moms so that they can take care of their kids. Overall, I thought the motherhood theme was done pretty well in this book. Though I do feel there are some scenes where Isabel just seemed a bit detached from everything. Like, maybe that was deliberate with her sleep problems, but sometimes Isabel felt like she could change her personality at the drop of a hat and couldn't remember some things that I really can't imagine a person could forget. I do think the pacing of this was a bit slow and really slowed down with the flashbacks. I get why they're included, but it did slow things down. Otherwise, the stuff in the now timeline I thought was really well done, the tension was high, and the characters all have their own motivations for making the choices they make. Another thing that makes this a bit of a slower read was the prose. It's beautiful. Willingham can write really well. But it definitely slowed down the story. It became very verbose, and some sentences are way longer than they needed to be. And some parts of the story felt like they were way more focused on the style of the writing and not the substance. There was like a lot of description of certain things and some kind of odd and drawn out similes. Good writing, but could have been trimmed down in some areas to pick up the pace and ramp up the tension. I do kind of question this being labeled as a thriller. I mean, shocker, I know, me judging a book that falls in the thriller category. While it's tense and suspenseful, and we have a cast of characters being sneaky and nefarious, I also think this reads more like a mystery as we try to unravel what happened to Mason and what's currently happening to Isabel. The reveal of what's actually going on, I thought was believable and worked with what had been set up in the story. We definitely got a resolution, but I do wish some things had been covered a bit more in length, as I still had some questions that needed answers. I wanted a better resolution on Isabel's sleeping situation, to be perfectly honest. But I will give the book a pass, as it gives us answers to 99% of my questions. Though I do still have some nagging questions about Isabel's memory when some things are revealed. Like, girl, this should not be a surprise to you. I also have to question the police department and their inability to solve this or look into certain things. If Isabel, lack of sleep, paranoid, and quick to attack people Isabel can figure out what's really going on, I have to imagine the police might have too. But all in, these nitpicks weren't enough to detract from my overall reading experience. I liked this. I'd give it a 4 out of 5 stars, and will definitely be putting Willingham on my future to-be-read pile. Alright. Next up was Really Good, actually, by Monica Heisey. And again, apologies if I'm mispronouncing a name there. Ooh, buddy. This was an add-on to my August Book of the Month box, as I've been going through some personal stuff and wanted some books that would inspire me and motivate me, and given the cover, I thought this one about a girl around my age going through some big life changes would be a great read. Would be. That's the key phrase. But let's talk back cover copy first before I continue ranting. Maggie is fine. She's doing really good, actually. Sure, she's broke. Her graduate thesis thesis on something obscure is going nowhere, and her marriage only lasted 608 days. But at the ripe old age of 29, Maggie is determined to embrace her new life as a surprisingly young divorcee, TM. Now she has time to take up 9 hobbies, eat hamburgers at 4 a.m., and get back out there, sex-wise. With the support of her tough-loving academic advisor, Maris, her newly divorced friend, Amy, and her group chat, naturally, Maggie barrels through her first year of single life, intermittently dating, occasionally waking up on the floor, and asking herself tough questions along the way. Laugh out loud funny, and filled with sharp observations. Really good, actually, is a tender and bittersweet comedy that lays bare the uncertainties of modern love, friendship, and our search for that thing we like to call happiness. This is a remarkable debut from an unforgettable new voice in fiction. Then up at the top it says, a hilarious and painfully relatable debut novel about one woman's messy search for joy and meaning in the wake of an unexpected breakup from comedian, essayist, and award-winning screenwriter Monica Heisey. I mean, they got the painful part right. My apologies, but this was very difficult to read. It felt more like I was reading someone's diary and terrible stream of consciousness. You can definitely tell that this was written by someone who comes from a background in TV, as it really read like it should have been voiceover over an opening montage to a TV show about our sad sack Maggie. I have DNF'd, I think, like 2 books in my entire life, and one was 50 Shades of Grey. So that tells you how low the bar is. And I really struggled with this. I'm not a quitter, but my God, did this book really challenge my resolve to finish what I start. In the first 70-some pages, I felt really perplexed, as there seemed to be no plot. We are literally just inside Maggie's head as she details buying all this crap she can't afford, and texting John, and emailing people, and bumping into people at the store. Truly, this has no structure. It's just a meandering mess of internal dialogue and Maggie's thoughts, with sometimes a random snippet of a real scene with her friends. This does not a story make. There's no plot. There's no point. It read like a therapy exercise where Maggie is supposed to write down what's going on inside her head, but then rip up the pieces because she's expelled those thoughts. But nope, we got it in print format instead. I get wanting to write something that's written for an audience of one, but then you cannot ask for money in return for it then. I so wanted to like this. I so wanted to relate to Maggie, but our girl needs some help. I'm sorry, but you're 29. Maggie is a child. She's a 13-year-old girl in a 29-year-old's body. She can't seem to do anything for herself. And girl, I need you to get some self-respect and dignity and take care of yourself. Even Ross Geller, with his 3 divorces, got on with his life. I also have to say, I didn't feel invested in her relationship with John. Like, we never hear about what they actually love about each other or why she's so broken up about their divorce. It's like the fact that she casually mentions, like, maybe they should divorce, but then is unable to shower for 3 weeks on end. Like, what? You're the one who brought it up. I don't understand what was so special about their relationship besides the fact that they were together for 10 years. We never get to really understand John or meet him or understand their relationship. Lastly, the ending was odd, and it goes back to my biggest gripe with this book. The lack of structure. This doesn't read like a real story. It just kind of ends, I guess, on a hopeful note, but still, resolution. Heard of it, Heisey? To say something positive, I did chuckle a few times. There was some decent humor in this, and I could see Heisey becoming a good writer if she sticks to more of that comedy. But girl, get some structure to this book. Like, actually make this a novel. This was not a novel. I'm gonna give it half a star for the humor. If I were being generous, I'd give it another half star for the cover because it is very Instagrammable. There's a reason this was popping up all over online. But that star is reserved for the illustrator, not the author. Mostly, I felt exhausted reading this, and the humor that I did enjoy was not worth the entire investment of slogging through this novel. I really wish I had DNF'd this. But again, I like to torture myself, apparently, and I'm not a quitter. All right, next up, we have June Reimagined by Rebekah Crane. I picked this as the Scotland setting was going to be the perfect read for my upcoming Scotland getaway, and I love a theme. I actually think this came from a Scribbler box, maybe the June one, just because that would fit so well, but I'm not actually sure what month this came in. But let's go ahead and see what the book promised to be about. Sometimes to start living, you have to be a little reckless. June Merriweather is on the run from her own life. Her brother is dead, her parents are liars, and her college major is a joke. Apart from her best friend, Matt, June is desperate for reinvention. And a one-way ticket out of Cincinnati to the Scottish Highlands is a good place to start. With a backpack, an urn, and a secret, June begins again. She snags a job at a cafe and finds lodging at a quaint inn with a quirky cast of housemates. The only problem? The inn's infuriatingly perceptive and sexy owner, Lennox. He's suspicious of June. After all, no one comes to Scotland in the winter, unless they're running from something. From rocky start to sizzling temptation, June's new world is exhilarating, and one detour away from disaster. With her past and her future both vying for attention, June can't begin to picture where her reimagined life is headed next. And falling in love with the last person she expected is only the beginning. So all in, this had a strong start, and I liked our main character, June, at first. She really started to grate on me later in the book, as she just kept making dumb decision after dumb decision and refusing to talk about anything or listen to anyone. Half her problems would be solved if she just communicated like a human being and not a tantruming 2-year-old. I'm trying to cut her some slack because she is supposed to be like 20 years old, but she's still an immature brat. Her backstory doesn't match her character or the person we're presented with. Like, we're told she's a partier and went to frat parties, but the June we spend time with seems pretty quiet and introspective and pretty introverted, minus like her simmering rage and stubborn tendencies. I do have to question the whole enemies to lovers trope that was rolled out here, as I'm not sure it really works. There's no reason for them to be enemies. There's no reason for Lennox to be such a prissy little bitch when he first meets June. He's just immediately a jerk to her, and I don't know why. I read Actor Age Eve Brown earlier this year, and while I didn't exactly love that portrayal of enemies to lovers either, at least I understood what it stemmed from. Like, girl hits him with her car and whatnot. Like, sure, makes sense he doesn't like her. But Lennox here, he just seems to not like her because the plot says so. I mean, fine, whatever, but it just set the story off on a weird note with him being such a weirdo and so antagonistic. I also think that some of the scenes in this read like they were out of order. Like, they hate each other for some reason, but then they have somewhat of an understanding and a drunken night out, and then they're right back to hating each other. What? And then like, oh, they're trying to be friends, but they're hating each other, but starting to realize that there's some attraction, and then they're flirty, but then she's mad at him, and he's avoiding her, but then they're flirty the next scene. Like, okay, I'm getting whiplash from this book. I really, truly, the enemies to lovers trope just did not do it for me in this book. I do think it did work somewhat well in Angie Hockman's Shipped, as the heroine and hero somewhat have a reason to be wary of each other. They're both after the same job. Makes sense that they'd view the other as their quote-unquote enemy. Here, it doesn't work. Crane tried writing Lennox as like a misanthrope in general, but I still don't like it. Like, have him be a cop or something so that June has to hide that she's working illegally in the country, and so that's why she's trying to push him away, and he's trying to figure out what's going on. Like, I don't know. Give me a reason. Like, he literally saves her life and then just seems to hate her. Which, like, yeah, was she irresponsible by not traveling with an EpiPen? Sure, but that's not a reason to hate her. Like, at that point, you might as well just let her die on the floor. Also really hated that it's a kind of a minor, but not really, spoiler alert. June finds out that Lennox lost his parents in a car accident the next time she is in the car with him, which is like one page later. She's leaning out the window and being reckless while he's obviously in distress. Like, read the room, girl. What the hell? I don't understand what they see in each other besides wanting to bang each other. And that'd be fine if that's, like, the way it was written, but it's not. Like, it's obviously they're, meant to be in true love and this, and they just don't understand each other yet. Like, I don't think they're ever going to understand each other. Also, I know this is a common trope in romances, but I could not stand him calling her Peanut all the flipping time. I don't think he ever actually says her name, or like if he does, maybe it's once. Lennox just calls June Peanut. And it was stupid. It was so stupid and annoying that every time he said it, I was worried my eyes were just going to roll so hard and roll right out of my head or I'd sprain something. Peanut, it's so, that's what a dad calls his like 3-year-old little girl. Don't like it. I also didn't love how all the guys are always grabbing June and manhandling her, and she doesn't seem to care. Like, some of the guy-girl relationships in this were kind of gross. Like, especially Angus, one of the side characters. It'd be one thing if we knew that Amelia, his crush, actually liked him, and this was just their weird sense of humor, and, like, she's totally into it. But it doesn't read that way. And Lennox doesn't seem to mind that his best friend is so casual about sexually harassing Amelia. Neat. There are some sex scenes in this that I glazed over as they were a paragraph long and really flowery. I don't know what's going on. But heads up if that is not your thing. This book does contain some sex scenes. I was really excited about the Scotland setting, but it kind of didn't matter here. We're told it's in Scotland. We get some description, but not really enough. It could have taken place in upstate New York with how much description we got about the setting. That was kind of a bummer, as I was ready to be immersed in the setting, again, just to prepare myself. Speaking of other characters in this, I also think that Matt's storyline kind of felt weird. Like, June says she's lying to him about everything, but it's like one thing. Like, a big thing, sure, but she makes it sound like her name isn't really June and she's a cyborg from the future. She also seems to know that he wants to be more than friends, and she's fine leading him on, even though she doesn't want to hurt their friendship. Then tell him you don't like him like that. It's hard to feel sorry for her when she knows she's doing something that she shouldn't be, as long as she acknowledges it. She can keep doing it, like, no, Matt sucks, and he's controlling. But June isn't doing herself any favors either. There's another side character, Eva, who's fine, but it almost read like kind of a meta way for Crane to insert herself or a proxy into the story, and it was kind of weird. Like, we don't know enough about Ava or even David to really care about them. And then when Ava made a joke, so Ava's character is a writer and like is constantly being like, oh, there's plot twists coming, and then surprise, surprise, there's a plot twist that comes and happens to June. But Ava makes a joke about a sequel, and all I could think was, please God, no. I actually liked June's dad's process of moving on, and would have preferred to follow his story instead of June's. Like, could we have started with him coming to Scotland or something? Like, I don't know, maybe that'd be a better book. All in, I gave this, I think, 2.5 stars, as it was better than really good, actually. But that's not saying much, as the bar was set so low after that book. This is fine, but I think it needed some more work. It needed to be polished. I wanted to feel like I was in Scotland at this old family inn. I wanted to feel like I was going to the pub with June and her friends. I wanted to care about why June was the way she was. The book just lacked depth, which is hard to swallow as the book deals with some pretty heavy topics, like death and learning to be who you want to be, not what others expect of you. But instead of exploring these topics in depth, we just get lighthearted scenes of June and Lennox having a food fight, calling each other names, Lennox infantilizing her, calling her Peanut. I mean, everything came together in the end, I guess, but it still just felt really disjointed, out of order, and again, very surface level. I get it, it's a romance, but I just wanted more. All right. Next up, we have You're Invited by Amanda Jayatissa. Again, apologies if I'm butchering that name. This was another add-on to my August Book of the Month box, but let's see what the book promised. When Amaya is invited to Kavi's over-the-top wedding in Sri Lanka, she is surprised and a little hurt to hear from her former best friend after so many years of radio silence. But when Amaya learns that the groom is her very own ex-boyfriend, she is consumed by a single thought. She must stop the wedding from happening, no matter the cost. But as the week of wedding celebrations begins and rumors about Amaya's past begin to swirl, she can't help but feel like she also has a target on her back. When Kavi goes missing and is presumed dead, all evidence points to Amaya. However, nothing is as it seems, as Jayatissa expertly unravels that each wedding guest has their own dark secret and agenda, and Amaya might not be the only one with a plan to keep the bride from getting her happily ever after. All in, I really enjoyed this. There were some things that were predictable and easy to guess at, but I still enjoyed seeing how the story unfolded and how everything played out. I was really intrigued by our main character, Amaya. We know right off the bat that something is off with her. But you want to understand how she became what we start with. You don't know if you can trust her or not. She's off-putting, a wee bit obsessed, and has fantasies of those around her being hurt. Also, trigger warning, there is self-harm in this book. Take care of yourself and avoid this if that could be hard for you to read. I also really liked Jayatissa's writing style. She does a great job of capturing people's real speech patterns and making each character distinct. I didn't even have to read dialogue tags to know who was saying what. This was done especially well, I thought, in the transcripts of the interviews with wedding guests. The interviews also make you question every character, as multiple people are hiding secrets, doing things that they shouldn't, and have maybe said they wish that Kavi, also sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, but they wish that Kavi was dead. The characters are complex and seriously flawed. A lot of the story focuses on family, reputation, how well you know someone, putting on masks, and who we really are when the spotlight isn't on us and we don't have to perform. I was a bit conflicted about the portrayal of Kavi's influencer life. I think it worked well showing her taking the photos and planning out her content in her head, but I also felt disconnected from it, and maybe that's the point, since Kavi doesn't really seem to care and actually kind of seems to hate her own followers. But then that begs the question of, why do it? It doesn't seem like she does it because she likes the lifestyle or needs brand deals for money or access to high fashion or travel. It was hard to take that part seriously, as she doesn't care, so why should I? The pacing, though, in this really worked well, and I never felt bored or felt like I wanted the story to just hurry the hell up. I do wish, though, that I had a clearer picture of the setting. I liked that it was based in Sri Lanka, but having never been there myself, I'd have appreciated a bit more setup and description so I could better envision the hotel, the houses, the overall Colombo setting. Though I do think that the culture and social hierarchy was described really well and helped develop the story a bit more. I really enjoyed that. Like I said, there were some things that were just a bit too predictable, or you could see some of the twists coming from a mile away. Now that I'm talking about it, this is one of those books that I closed feeling really satisfied. But the more I think about it, the more illogical some things feel. I still really liked reading this, but now that I'm thinking about it, there are a few things that just... okay. Some things feel like they were just written to be misdirects instead of leading into the plot. Also, one of the twists hinges on a character jumping to conclusions, and that just felt a bit forced. And one of the twists at the end just felt way off, and especially for the tone of this entire book, it was added just to ramp up the ick factor. We don't really see it play out in any meaningful way besides just to seal the deal about this character being a terrible human being. I already got that. They sucked. This nasty cherry on top was not needed. Again, all that said, I still really enjoyed my time with this, and it was a book that I did not want to put down. I avoided doing other things just so I could finish reading this. Compared to some of the duds that I had read this month, this was a lovely palate cleanser and a pretty good mystery. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars and would definitely be interested in reading her work again. All right, so last up this month is the Borrow a Bookshop holiday. I want to say I got this in an unplugged book box, like maybe their beachy special edition one. Also, I read this to get hyped for my upcoming trip to England, and this takes place in Devon, and it sounded pretty cute, and probably would be a good one to end the month of August on. But let's talk about what the book promised to be about. Spend your days talking books with customers in your own charming bookshop and serving up delicious cream teas in the cozy cafe. Bookworms, what are you waiting for? Your holiday is going to be lit, Urary. Apply to the Borrow a Bookshop Cafe down along Clovelore, Devon. Jude Crawley should be on top of the world. She just graduated as a mature student, so she can finally go public about her relationship with philosophy professor Mac. Until she sees Mac kissing another girl, and her dreams crumble, and worse, their dream holiday, running a tiny bookshop in the harbor village of Clovelore for 2 weeks, is non-refundable. Throwing caution to the winds, Jude heads down to Devon, eager to immerse herself in literature and heal her broken heart. But there's one problem. 6-foot-tall, brooding, but gorgeous, Elliot, who's also reserved the bookshop holiday for 2 weeks. As Jude and Elliot put their differences aside to run the bookshop, it seems that Jude might be falling in love with more than just words, until she discovers what Elliot is running from, and why he's hiding out in Clovelore. Can Jude find her own happy ending in a tiny tumble-down bookshop? Or is she about to find out that her bookish holiday might have been an unexpected twist in the tale? So, like the first book I read this month, this was a quick, good read, and it didn't try to be anything that it wasn't. It was a cozy romance set in a beachy town in Devon, and for what it set out to be, it was good. I do have to say that the main character was an interesting one. Like, she read a lot younger and more immature than I expected for a 29-year-old, though I do understand why she is that way, as she had to miss out on college when most of us go through that stage. But she still read a bit odd. She's just very naive and sheltered, but then can be very hardened and mean when she jumps to conclusions. She's also a bit of a drama queen at times, which just seems at odds with her upbringing and background. Overall, I liked Jude, but there were times that she kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Also, some of the conflict in the book only happens because Jude doesn't converse or think things through, so it did add to my struggle a bit with this book. I really do like her friendship with Daniel. It was cute and platonic. But I am curious why she doesn't have other friends. Like, she even makes a point of saying how she doesn't know how to be friends with other women. What? That really, I don't know. That line felt kind of weird to me. I do wish we had seen more of her tending to the bookshop and exploring Clovelore a bit more. This book is very light. I mean, it's a quick read, but it's also somewhat really rushed. Like, it's quick, it's cute, but I wish we got to understand the setting more, or see, like, Jude flipping through some of the books that she loves so much, learning how to order books and help people find what they're looking for. We don't really get to know the people of the town, and we don't get the full experience of running this bookshop and living in this charming little town with all this quirky cast of characters. Like, I swear, we spend more time on her quote-unquote flaw of being bad at math. Really? That's her big flaw? She's not good at math? Like, I'm sure the point of sale system does the math for her. But I'm sorry, I rolled my eyes every time her, like, flaw of being bad at math was brought up. It's like Bella being clumsy in Twilight. It's not really a flaw. We also spend a lot of time on Aldous, the dog that lives in the bookshop. Okay, again, for how quick a read this book is, like, can we be focusing on the things that actually matter? Like, we're focusing on things that I'm not sure we need to be spending time on. This book is not long, and either something should have been trimmed or the book should have gone on a bit longer to give time to like the real parts of the story that matter. The writing style of this was interesting. I liked it at first as it's written kind of like the Confessions of a Shopaholic series that I love, where Jude addresses us directly and brings us inside her head. But something about later in the book, I didn't like the writing style as much, but I also think that's maybe a me problem, not the book's problem. It didn't change. I think my perception of how much I enjoyed reading it did. It's a fine stylistic choice, but just something to note. I did like Elliot, and I liked how Jude coaxed him out of his shell. But again, instead of spending time telling me about how bad she is at math and that she can't count and that Aldous has tummy problems, I wish we'd spent more time watching their relationship bloom. It's like she doesn't want him like to spend the night in the same room when they get to the bookshop, but then bam, they're heading to Pound Town. Like, we don't see it, which the sex scene's fine. Like, I think sex scenes are very hard to pull off, pun intended. But I wanted to see more of their relationship. I wanted more time spent on their flirtation and their chemistry building and their falling for each other. So again, instead of spending time telling me that she can't add 2 + 2, like, show me what they have in common, show me what they're talking about, let them have some cute moments before it's just, oh, you're ruining my vacation, and oh, I love you. Like, yee. So the book does allude that Elliot has a big secret that he's running from. It's one that I've definitely never read about before in a book, but it's also kind of silly. I mean, it's not silly in the context of what actually happened, but just how Elliot is about it, because he's all, I cannot tell you what's going on. And then we find out, and it's like, this whole thing could have been resolved if Jude just ever pulled out her phone and Googled him. It's almost like the internet doesn't exist in this town, and I did read another Goodreads review that the person was like, was this set in like the 1960s? Like, I don't get how she's not like figuring out who he is, or she's so upset, like, he won't tell me what's going on. Like, girl, the internet exists. Look him up. Lastly, I think some of the dialogue could have been improved. Just some of like the, big grand speeches at the end were very spelled out and felt very either Disney or just elementary. Like, I get it. Like, could you guys actually, like, even Elliot's supposed to be like 31. Could you guys talk like you're 30-year-olds, please? Again, it was fine for what it set out to be. It's a very quick read. It was cute. It's kind of cheesy. And if that's your cup of tea, you will probably really like this. I'd give it a 3.5 stars out of 5. And if you're on the hunt for a fluffy, predictable romance with an English beach setting, this is a good fit. It's not trying to be anything it isn't. It is a cute little romance set on the beach. All right, so that wraps up what I read in August. If you read any of the same books as me this past month, I'd love to hear your thoughts, or if you have any recommendations of what I need to read in September, or any spooky recs, as I'm already preparing my Halloween/October to-be-read pile. Please share those ideas in the comments below. Otherwise, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next month in the reading room.